Welcome back to Chop for Time. This week we're going to be diving into Sunday's message where we were talking about God's name that he reveals in Exodus chapter 3.
All right, here we are. Welcome back. This is weird. This is different.
I feel bizarre being in this spot.
This is not our assigned church seats. That's all I can tell you. So,
well, I feel bad. We displaced Kim the last 2 weeks in a row because we had a few too many. Or Kylie and I brought a group of students that we were kayaking with on Sunday, and it took up the entire row that Kim normally sits at. I was worried.
Goodness. I'm surprised I didn't hear about that, but that's good.
We apologize profusely.
Yeah, so. That's growth. That's that sanctification process that you taught about last night. So, so how was your all's weekends, Thomas? What happened, man?
It's good. I got sunburned.
Which is a rarity in your world, right?
No, not in my world, but it is in March. You know, to get sunburned in March is pretty nice. So Saturday was so warm. We went kayaking. The air was warm. The water was not.
It's probably still low water level at the lake, right?
It was
like
like
come up to
7
summer pool.
feet lower than it normally was. It was crazy. We tried to go out to that hidden waterfall thing. And we got almost the whole way there, and then it was just land, so we all just got out and walked the rest of the way. But it was so muddy. There was just times where you'd be walking on sand, and then you take a step and you just go into your thigh, just in mud. It was fun.
Did you feel like a trailblazer at that point?
Yeah, I mean, like we were some sort of outdoor wilderness explorers.
Right, that you were going into the land uncharted. Yeah, it's like, we have reached the end of navigable waters. We must get out now and walk. Yeah. Anyhow, James, what happened in your world this weekend, man?
Me and Catherine went bowling.
Okay. She beat you again?
I beat her one game. She beat me one game.
So she beat you?
Yeah, don't let her tell you different.
Okay.
But
that's what happened.
We played Skeeball, and again, she won and I won. And
Skeeball? What's Skeeball?
You never played Skeeball?
Oh, Skeeball's awesome. It's fun.
What is it?
Skeeball is the most infuriating game on the planet.
Oh.
Well, while I'm playing it, then if I switch to another game, that game becomes the most infuriating game on the planet.
And then
much fun.
Then I taught Sunday night.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's all I did this weekend, really.
Cool. Good. Okay. Well, as we talked about, this is weird. I'm in the captain's chair here this week, which
I didn't realize that's what we were calling that spot.
Well, it's just in my head. That's what
chair.
Yeah, it will be while I'm sitting here. You get back here. It's no longer the captain's chair.
This becomes the captain's chair when you're in it. Okay.
Exactly. It's not so much place specific as it is person specific. Anyhow, we try to be humble. So, Thomas, yesterday you spoke on Exodus chapter 3, the name of God. We kind of, but not really, covered the whole chapter. We just kind of themed it, really.
Yeah.
So
we stopped a few verses short
of
the end and primarily focused on 2 verses in particular. Yeah.
So this major revelation that we see happening in this passage is God speaks for the first time, but it's in what he's saying. That's the major revelation, not the fact that he speaks. It's when he makes that statement of, I am who I am. So what are some of the things that you really wanted to drive home yesterday and make sure we walked away with an understanding of?
Well, there was the leading up passage. I kind of split it into sort of 3 sections. There was verses 1 through 12, which is some would say would be the mission given to Moses, but I sort of emphasized this character, the angel of the Lord that shows up. And we sort of talked a little bit about that. We talked about how Jude equates that to being Jesus himself, which is like this sort of pre-incarnate version of Jesus, which says a lot about Jesus' character. Because sometimes we just think, well, we say that he's God's son, so that means he was born at some point.
Yeah, it's like, he just shows up.
No, but he always has been. Right. And I think it's funny just to think of Jude, of all people, saying that, my brother was there in Exodus with Moses.
Right. Because you mentioned yesterday that, Jude was half brother of Jesus, but he was really reluctant.
Yep. I think all of his brothers were. James
is the same way. Yeah. But it wasn't until later that they really recognized the messianic nature of Jesus.
Which is actually huge in that, like, if either of my sisters claimed to be God incarnate, I don't know what it would take for me to believe them.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point.
It would take a lot of real evidence to prove that. So clearly that was the case for Jude and James. and I know there were others. I can't remember their names.
Joseph and Simon.
There you go. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that, and I wanted to emphasize that this passage is the time when Moses is given his mission, but it's also, more importantly, the time when, like you said, God reveals who he is with this statement, I am who I am, this sort of all-encompassing, I am everything, right, beginning to end. I don't rely on anything, and I tried to draw the comparison of just how much we rely on to even exist, and I barely even scratched the surface, of we need even simple things like we need the ground to walk on, we need trees to give us oxygen, and parents.
I
and
did
friends,
enjoy
family.
your parallel with gravity. You said if there were not gravity, then we would just go floating off somewhere. And then it was one of those moments in a preacher's mind that I could tell he really has no idea how to verbalize what he's getting ready to say.
Yep.
And then you said, and the opposite of gravity, which I guess we would just
sink into the ground
sink into
somewhere.
the ground.
I don't know, just squash into.
That's like profound. I like it.
Spinning too fast or too slow. I don't really know what happens, but I'm not a scientist for obvious reasons. So yeah, this big comparison that God relies on nothing. Yeah. This I am character simply is, and we are not. We had to be created. We have to have millions of things just to function. And he's so different to that. The great I am. There's a lot in that name alone, but I just want to emphasize just the gravity of that statement that nobody else can really make. Even other gods, so-called gods of other religions, didn't even make that claim of always being. Like these guys were in Egypt at this point, and I can't remember the name of their god. I think it was. I'll need to look it up.
Which one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's the initial one, which is the one that comes out of the water in an egg. Which I just thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
But the egg turns into the land.
Is it Set?
Possibly. There's a few.
Yeah.
They've got tons.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to at some point. All the Egyptian gods that are talked about. The Babylonian creation story assumes that creation has already happened, and then their god Marduk is the son of somebody else and was created. The Assyrian Empire have their gods that were created or came into being. It's only Yahweh, which we'll get to in a second, is the one that has always been, which is a bigger statement than anyone else, any other religion has really made. Yeah. I was saying that this phrase, I am who I am, is Ehyeh. He says Ehyeh is I am. And I wanted to say that because every time people think about God's name, they might immediately jump to Jehovah or Yahweh. But that's not what he actually says there. Right. So I was making sure that we have this distinction that he calls himself one thing, Ehyeh, and we call him something else, which is what shows up in verse 15.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. James, what are some of the things that maybe stood out to you from Thomas's message yesterday?
Well, I told Thomas after the sermon, I said that's kind of the first time I had heard anyone really focus on the angel of the Lord. He pops up throughout the entirety of the Old Testament. Like he's everywhere. But he never really kind of explains who he is. You kind of have to, he does kind of say, but you have to kind of figure it out. Yeah. But I've never heard anybody actually preach on the angel of the Lord. And then, because Jude does say, this was Jesus. So I thought that was really cool because I had just never really heard it preached before.
Yeah.
And then just going over like, I remember at one point you said the fact of how some people, like, so when God says I am who I am, it's not him just saying like, just deal with it. That's...
Well, I just thought that's a little English quip, because you could take it as this sassy remark of, I am who I am, leave me alone.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was really cool because I feel like sometimes as parents, when we ask them things, I know that's my mom before, like, why this, why that, or my dad, and they would always say, it's because I'm the parent, so, get over it.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I'm glad to say that I've not said that in a couple months.
Fair enough.
So, and I would always be like, well, that makes no sense. But God is not saying that. He's literally telling us about his nature, which I was listening to, it's a shocker here, but R.C. Sproul.
Wow,
and he was...
I didn't know he ever...
I didn't know he listened to R.C. Sproul.
But he was talking about how God's incomprehensibleness. I messed that up.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. But I always thought that when God is just, he said that God's not completely unknowable. He said otherwise we wouldn't be able to know anything about him, or we wouldn't be able to relate to him in any way, shape, or form. But it's just the fact that at a certain point we are limited and we just simply can't know everything about God. And I am who I am tells us a great deal about who he is, but still, there's still so much we don't know.
Yeah.
You'd made a statement yesterday that I think is probably should stick with all of us for a while. You were talking about the Moseses, the Samsons, the Jacobs, the Davids, all of these characters, and you made a statement that we really don't need to. We need to teach about them, but sometimes we can focus too much on the heroes of the Bible instead of the hero individual of the Bible, and that's we don't want to put it in too much of a negative framing from what we see in these men and women that we see in the Bible, but with the frame it accurately enough to where we understand that they're not the hero.
Yeah,
that is one alone.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great statement.
Especially just with Moses in that he just messes up all the time.
Yeah.
And he's like, Moses is the one whose face is literally glowing because he's that close with God, but still he doesn't want to go on his mission. He kills a guy. Later on he hits a rock instead of speaks to a rock.
Yeah.
Which
cost him the promised land.
Weird passage. But yeah, I mean, it's just another story of screw ups that God is working through. Yeah. So we can relate to them closer than we can relate to God, but we can celebrate God more than we can celebrate them. If that makes sense.
Gotcha.
It's probably where would land.
Yeah.
Something with them, but I just thought, especially because whenever you were sectioning up Exodus, the main part that you wanted emphasized of this was the I am statement, and it is easy to get distracted with Moses' response to the mission, maybe not the most important thing in this passage,
right?
Which is why I left out the whole ending of the chapter.
Yeah, which we'll revisit a little bit, in passing next week. But yeah, I mean that's one of the things that we talked about before you get to the areas of what you chopped, and this may be one of them, I don't know, but we had talked about how that we see two really epoch type moments in Scripture of God revealing Himself in ways that have never been seen before, and we've led off with this study so heavily on seeing Jesus as the greater Moses, but seeing our story as well in the book of Exodus. I think that the first real epoch change that we see in God revealing who He is and His character is what you spoke about. God speaking in Exodus 3 and Him making that ehia. Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like EH''HAY. And everybody pronounces things differently when it comes to Hebrew because nobody speaks it.
Yeah, right. But that statement of I am who I am, that is the first real epoch change in the way that we see God revealing Himself. And then the next one that at least in my mind from a biblical standpoint, is when Christ arrives. Because that's a whole new revelation of the nature of God and who He is. Yeah. But beyond that, I'd be interested to hear what did you chop this week?
There was like 3 or 4 things, and I have them in my notes. I really hope my phone doesn't make this beeping sound. I have it on airplane mode, so I'm hoping it doesn't. But one of the things that actually you mentioned in James was doing a project for school, and he mentioned it as well, is that Jesus uses the phrase "I am" a lot. He uses it 7 times in the book of John, which is not coincidental. Right. 7 is an important number for completeness.
Yeah, so completion, for perfection.
Yeah. So he says "I am" about himself 7 times, which is crazy to even make that statement. And again, we have Jesus kind of showing up in Exodus. Yeah. It's different. But it's clearly God, this character that we can interact with. So it's not the Father, but speaks as though God. We assume that makes sense that it would be Jesus. And he goes on to say, I am 7 times, claiming that he is the person mentioned in Exodus 3, which eventually gets him killed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and you had mentioned yesterday that the Hebrew word for Yahweh, they wouldn't have even
They
spoken.
wouldn't say
They
it.
wouldn't have even given verbalization to
Yeah.
it. So that should indicate the weight for us
Yeah.
of just what it meant when Jesus
Yeah.
came on, and not only verbalizing the word, but then saying, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
That thing that you won't even speak,
Yeah.
that's me.
I know in Mark, whenever Jesus, they're like, all right, are you the Son of the Blessed One? Just tell us who you are. And he's like, yeah, I am. And you'll see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power come on the clouds. And Caiaphas, the high priest, gets so mad that he said that, rips his whole tunic and everything apart. And he said, he's like, all right, let's just kill him. Like, what's the point?
And he makes two claims there. He's like, not only am I God, but I'm also the one prophesied in Daniel.
Yeah.
You thought it was going to be a person. No, it's God himself. And that, that's me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what a serious.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm just done.
Yeah, it's big claims. But I didn't quite get into a whole lot. In my online one, I mentioned that Jesus called himself I am. I didn't. It's really weird doing an online one and one in person because they were different.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
Fundamentally the same, but there's some nuances that differ. Yeah.
So, he calls himself I am, which was huge. Another one is the YHWH stuff, the Yahweh thing. I tried to put it in the video. Hebrew is backwards because I spelt it out on the screen, and it was YHWH from right to left, and then I said that's where we get our name Yahweh, which was left to right, and I was like, I didn't actually say that, and it might have looked really confusing online. But that's where YHWH is where we get the name Yahweh from, and it appears over 6,800 times in the Old Testament, which is quite a lot. But also apparently, and I haven't looked a whole lot into this, which is one of the reasons I didn't include it because I can't fully fact check it just yet. But every time that the name Yahweh is used in a specific way, it's always when God is relating to his people, specifically in a relational way. So the name that, and again, that's the name that we are to use for him, is used when relating to his people, which just gives that more intimate, personal relatability to him, which I thought was kind of cool. And then there's just tons of little like branches you can go down with his name, with the Jehovah thing. Where on earth did Jehovah come from? Because it's not actually in the Bible anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's so. There's this. I've learned this from the Bible Project, and I'll link that video in the description because it's fantastic. But the letters were YHWH for Yahweh, but they would say Adonai, which was the word for sovereign Lord. And then they would take the consonants of Yahweh and the vowels of Adonai and mix them to get Yahuwah. And then English translators just made that Jehovah. That's kind of where we got Jehovah from. I find that interesting. Yeah. And that video is just fantastic because it's one of the Bible Project ones, and just the animation's good, and it's frustratingly good. I didn't feel like it was necessarily a thing needed for a Sunday morning. But it's one of those little Bible-y nerd things that are fun to know.
I agree.
But
that's something I always, because I do know people who are faithful followers of Christ and they call God Jehovah, and I don't ever say it to him because it's not necessary. But in my head, I'm just like, God never says his name is Jehovah. It's not mentioned anywhere. It's like we see I am, and then we see Adonai, and we see Yahweh. Yeah. But I was like, I don't remember unless you're reading something I don't know about.
In some ways, it's cool because you're mixing the two names. Like you're mixing his name with Sovereign Lord, which I hope he appreciates. I haven't asked him, but I hope he would appreciate the sort of calling him not only his name but also Sovereign Lord. So it's
it's a name as opposed to a title.
Almost. So I mean, and God has hundreds of titles. Yeah. Throughout, and I think that's the biggest difference with this passage is this isn't about titles. This is a name.
This is a name. Yeah,
it's a big difference.
I remember you said that names have great importance. In the Bible. So especially like you said, like God changes Abraham's name and changes at one point changes Jacob's name. But then when God gives us His name, like that's the Like that's ridiculously major, because then it's like
and it never changes.
Yeah, it never changes from generation to generation.
Yep.
So, because like I know he says like he's like I didn't tell this to Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, but he's like I'm telling it to you, which means something.
Yeah.
That like this is something he's doing something different now, which is going to last forever.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered about the terminology? And this is kind of completely and totally off topic, but not really. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We see that so frequently in Scripture. Why is it still referred to as Jacob? Why not Israel? Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, because we don't see Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. It's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob instead of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel.
Do you
Be
think
an interesting little study.
do you think maybe like God refers, because he says like I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So do you think maybe he's referring to the fact like it doesn't matter who they were before, but it only matters about the fact of what I changed their name to, because that's what matters. I don't know. That's just kind of what I'm thinking. Like, and plus when I hear that, it kind of makes me know like he's the God of history.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Well, and he's still our God whenever we're in deception, with Jacob being the deceiver. He's still all powerful over that.
But yeah, I mean, there were tons of names that I could have got into as well, like Jesus changing the names of some of his disciples.
Yeah.
You got Peter, meaning the rock.
Yeah.
The foundation that the church was built on, and but yeah, there's rabbit holes.
Yeah.
The Sons of Thunder.
Sons of Thunder. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I want to be called the Son of Thunder. Or start a band called the Sons of Thunder.
Maybe we just name them Sons of Thunder Ministry.
Yeah.
TM.
There we
And
go.
just don't do what they did. They was trying to burn down houses.
Calling down everything. I was like, oh yeah, we'll show you. All right.
I think the only other thing I chopped out was those last 4 verses, 3 or 4 verses, or whatever it was at the end of the book. But if you're going over those next week,
because God kind of calls his shot here.
Yeah.
I mean, after he goes into that, we see in verse 16 him starting with, he's like, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. This is how people are going to react to begin with. This is how Pharaoh's going to react. This is how this is all going to play out. And God does that a couple times over these next couple, because we're going to be covering chapter 4 next week. And, it's just amazing to kind of sit back and see Moses's responses to these things. And, I mean, us talking about the heroes and the hero thing again, like this next chapter in chapter 4, we're actually going to see where God's anger is kindled against Moses. And then in one passage, it says that, God was going to kill him.
Right. Yeah.
And that, fortunately, that was stopped. But
Right.
Yeah, that's that weird thing. Yeah.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
One of those odd passages of Scripture. But
But what I really wanted to drive home, especially, was just that ending part of every breath that we take proclaims his name, which I just think is a really cool picture.
Yeah.
And Jackie Brandt came up to me afterwards and says that I can't breathe anymore. Like without thinking about it, I was like, great.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. That's what we want.
Yeah.
I just think it's a cool picture. Whether, it's an interpretation of that.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's not completely accurate, it's still true.
It's still a mindfulness thing.
Every every breath we take is borrowed breath from Yahweh himself anyway. I just think it's a cool picture to try and remember.
Yeah. James, you have anything else?
No, not really.
No, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, next week, chapter 4, we're going to have a little bit of supplemental contact.
It was close to that. It was more like contact, but
supplemental content. Go ahead.
I have a problem though. Like honestly, sometimes people will say stuff in a really thick Southern accent, and it just comes out that I'll mimic it.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually with Christy. I can't help it. It just happens.
Christie's is just the perfect one to
Wi-Fi.
do.
That was the big one for Christy. Love you, Christy.
So she's like one of the 2 people that watches this faithfully. So
Just gonna leave a dislike.
Yeah. But hey, we can't see those now.
That's true.
That's good. You can dislike it all you want to. It's not going to bother us. Next week, Exodus 4, we will have some supplemental content this week coming out. So be watching this channel for that, and we'll see you next week.